Welcome back to Bear Down, part of the Coach Steve Show. We are back, 3-month hiatus, 3 months, a month hiatus, and
3
we're
months.
back. It felt like 3 months. I came down here yesterday to do my own little solo one, just to set everything up, make sure the camera still worked, the microphone still worked. And then I looked at the last episode. It was January 22nd, and I'm like, oh, it's literally been a month.
It's amazing what happens with house construction. That can change things.
Oh, and the stairs look great. Like, this is nothing, like, I'm not complaining. The walls had to get sanded down. The wood had to get sanded down, and then the primer didn't dry right and everything else. And I was like, oh, it's okay. I got basketball in full swing. Take some time away from this. I forgot how to do this, like plug everything. My computer has not been turned on in like 2 weeks. So it's like I forgot everything, how to do this. Yesterday I did this whole episode. I stopped the video. I start to do it. I look. I didn't stop the recording audio, so it picked me up like doing other things. I'm like, oh, I forgot how to do all of this.
Now, wait a minute. Did you cover? This was before we came on. Did you cover the computer correctly, so none of the particles are getting in that beast?
I had a plastic tarp. I covered the computer screen, covered the camera, covered the microphone. My computer was upstairs.
Oh, well then, okay, that's good. Unless I just completely whiffed on that, but good.
But the what would you call this thing I record on? This thing I have here, the what's it called?
Microphone?
No, not the microphone. Where the microphone plugs into.
The input box.
That wasn't covered right, so there was dust all over it. So yesterday I had to clean it off, blow into everything, make sure. So that's why when I plugged this all in, I was like, oh, it still works. We're all good. Because I had everything covered, but it wasn't technically covering that because it wasn't on top of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, good news is that you would hear it right away. Sounds great.
Okay,
it's like,
good.
It's like the sand was never even there.
Good. Okay, that's because I was like, oh, I swear if I have to buy another one. But I mean, I've had this thing for 4 years, I think 3 years. So I'm like, if it's time, it's time. But but we're back. Bear down here. We're kind of behind on the talks, but that's okay. There's not a lot. I know the combine's happening as we speak in Indianapolis. Ben Johnson and them are there. But that's about it. There hasn't been really any moves, but we are going to discuss the coaching staff that Ben Johnson has hired. It's a lot of coaches. And to come to find out, this is the pretty norm of how many coaches are on staff.
Yeah.
One radio show talked about how they, I think, 20 coaches or all this stuff. And it's like, you almost have a coach per 2 players because of what he's brought to the table, which is good. I think Ben Johnson's taking the Lions approach. He's taken the approach of, wow, they're paying me a lot of money. They're investing a lot of money to get coaches. Listening to Ryan Poles talk a little bit today about how they know he admitted that they screwed up laying the foundation for Caleb Williams, which I'm like, oh, so you finally admitted.
You think?
Yeah, that part. But he's hired a lot of coaches, defense coordinator, offense coordinator, which I got into a little bit of a debate, weeks ago with somebody about, I hate how they give the OC title to somebody that doesn't call plays, and they wanted to debate me on it, which was weird. But they hired a lot of coaches, so we're going to discuss the coaching. But before diving into like individual coaches, is there like a grade you would give the hiring of these coaches? Did it meet the expectations of who he would hire, how this would look?
I think if I got to go on paper, I have no real kind of like grudging or disappointment to express immediately. I feel like in terms of the coordinators, especially that, you got about as solid as what you can get. Yeah. Yes. Johnson's going to call plays, but Declan Doyle has been through the NFL ringer for several years, has been on his way up. So, he's the one that's as long as it's Ben calling him and he's not the one at the controls, I feel like there's a little more certainty there. Not saying that Doyle's not ready to do it, but I still feel that he's going to be a solid second option, or at least almost like in a way I feel an assisting role in this capacity when it comes to prep. Retaining Richard Hightower, thumbs up. He's been doing a great job, I feel like, special teams wise and setting things up for the Bears last few years. So good for him. But yeah, I mean, the assistant coaches, I think, is where it really shines. Is there's a lot of quality offensive talent, especially that's coming in, and guys that either you like recognize as like high quality player names that are converted to coaching, or some dudes that have been through the ringer in the coaching sphere elsewhere, like an Anthony Blevins or an Eric Bieniemy, that I think are using this as an opportunity to get in with some minds that I think are more modern day NFL thinking, which is what I like about this. So, we can keep diving through the rest, but that's just like my initial thoughts. I don't think this is a bad setup for a crew. Execution is the name of the game, but like to start, I got no problems.
No, would Declan's age, that seemed to bother people. I think he's like 28, like he's still very young, and that kind of rose some question marks about him. For me, I thought about that. I said, yeah, that kind of is quote unquote concerning, but also if Ben Johnson feels like he can do the job, then to me it doesn't matter. And I also think we're in a world now where he's closer to age with some of those players, so being around them, he can kind of relate. And
Yeah.
then the fact that he worked with Sean Payton, who is a very, very, very brilliant offensive mind, I think would help him. Now, what I alluded to the debate, and this was weeks ago, and I'm going to paraphrase. I can't remember what I said. What was said to me was I said I hate how they give offensive coordinator titles, because in my mind, when I hear offensive coordinator, that means they're calling the plays. Now, I know in Ben Johnson's press conference, he kind of laid it out saying that he's going to help get him ready for the offense because Ben Johnson's going to have other things to do. But Ben Johnson is going to call plays, but Declan will be watching all the film. He's going to say this, like putting it all kind of together, working
Right.
with him. But I also hate that title. Like, come up with a different title. Like, he's not calling plays. So someone said to me, it was a comment or a tweet, I don't even remember, something about, well, he is coordinating the offense because he's putting it all together for Ben Johnson. And I said, well, I mean, I guess you could look at it that way, but I still don't like that because it seems like he's calling plays. For example, we saw it this year where we thought somebody was calling plays after Shane Waldron was fired. And then Eberflus was fired. Then it was, well, we're going to promote this guy to offensive coordinator. And it's like, well, is he calling plays? Is someone else calling plays? I don't like that. But I do like how Ben Johnson is very open about how, no, I'm calling it. Declan and he are going to work very close together and get it rolling. So hopefully that helps that. The age part didn't bother me. I think Dennis Allen was a home run hire for a defensive coordinator.
Absolutely.
Kind of like maybe a better D coordinator than Eberflus, but just a similar path of like defense coordinator goes to the Saints, doesn't really work out. It wasn't as bad as the Bears, I think, but it just didn't work out the way it was going to. And now he's back. He says he's in his 30th year coaching professional football. So that's a long time being in the NFL. And from listening to him talk, he seems more of an aggressive type of play caller than Eberflus was with the Bears. He wants to bring blitzes, wants to do this. So I think for an actual coordinator, Ben Johnson did a great job finding a defensive coordinator because Dennis Allen was high on the list for people to hire. And I think that Ben Johnson understands that they have to score points in this new era of NFL, but he also understands that it's Chicago. And what is Chicago built on? Aggressive defenses that helps them stay in games. So I think Dennis Allen was a home run of a defense coordinator hire.
I never had a problem with it, and similar for how I viewed, like, say, a Josh McDaniel over his career. There's just some coaches that are better suited to focus and kind of hone their skill on one side of a ball. And Allen is one of those that I think is consistently shown he's better when he's just given the keys to one part of a team and then running that team in the way he wants. Allen as well, and I agree with folks with this. And I'm with you here. Definitely more aggressive. It felt like Eberflus kind of, the longer he went on taking those responsibilities, the more he just kind of seemed to shy away from, maybe creative blitzing or trying to find ways to kind of open up pressure. And felt like it was more of like straightforward. If we can just kind of protect to create pressure, we can do what we need to. And it never seemed to materialize as consistently as people hope for. Yes, it was, I think, at its best when he took over play calling in 2023. But this year, I think, showed that even with him taking those keys, that it just wasn't enough. They needed to have more creativity on that side of the ball. And later in the year, that glaring hole in their run defense started to really show itself, and it kind of opened up opportunities for teams to kind of just take advantage of those lack of talents, because they, to do Matt Eberflus' scheme, he wants to, run more basic, and I think he just couldn't do that. I think Dennis Allen's going to be way more aggressive, and I do like the more aggressive play style. I think especially with today's NFL, you kind of, unless you have a really well built and high quality roster with guys that just know their assignment in and out, like say a Philadelphia where we watched them against Kansas City, you more than often than not, you need to have some sort of element that gets pressure on the backfield and causes a little bit of timing or miscues to happen. I think Dennis is the perfect guy for this job. So yeah, slam dunk, tons of coaching experience as well. You can lean on, of course, if you're Ben Johnson, since he's been a head coach through the ringer twice now in the NFL. It seems like a no-brainer to me. So that was, to me, the highlight pickup of this entire staff is Dennis Allen, just for so many other reasons outside of even just the defensive mind he brings.
Right. And then the other hire, I think, maybe for most, but I know for me, on the edge of my seat was who's going to coach the O-line. And I know that was like one of the
Yes.
last people he hired, which was kind of weird because I said, okay, it has to be defense coordinator, O-line. I don't care who really the OC is to coordinate this. And took a while. They hired Dan Roshar, who has tons of college experience. He had O-line coaching experience with the Saints. The last 2 years he was at Tulane coaching the O-line. He's been coaching for 41 years. I would say, no offense to him, it wasn't like a splash O-line hire, but it's a guy that has some old school in him. I would think coaching for a long time in college and a little bit of NFL, but he also understands the new era of how to coach because of being in college and understands that world. And I also think if they're going to draft, which they should, O lineman in this draft and be a little younger, if they go to draft some there, he can relate to them. And so if you look at his coaching, resume, in the stops he's been at, there's always been a good high run game, lots of yards. Something that was interesting was that I couldn't remember, and I should have because I'm a Big Ten guy. He was at Michigan State for 6 years,
Yeah.
from 2007 to 12. He was an offense coordinator, tight ends coach his last 2 years. He had Le'Veon Bell as his running back during that time.
Now that I forgot, but hey, pretty sweet,
They had the
Pretty sweet.
Big Ten rushing title with 1,793 yards. That in the last year there, or the 2 years there, whatever it was. His first time being a coordinator in 2011, they averaged 31 points a game back then, and this would have been 2010, I think, 2010, 11. Lots of passing yards and stuff like that, and that just kind of got him into where other places. He was a running backs coach for the Saints. Pierre Thomas and Darren Sproles. Darren Sproles. Oh, I haven't heard that name in a long time. When I was
Yeah.
looking at this,
Man, feels like forever ago now.
So he's coached different positions, is where I'm getting at. Coached at different levels, different positions in the NFL, and has always been around some good offenses. So not just putting him in the corner of just the O line. He understands all the other positions with offense, so I think he can bring some good insight to that, and understanding all that. So necessarily, what I mean by not a splash hire, it wasn't like a Dennis Allen. It wasn't like anything else. but I think it's a under the radar type of hire, I hope, which we can't get any worse with how the O-line played that we've seen.
Yeah.
But in term, they hired him, then they hired another college coach, um, the assistant offensive line coach, and Devin. I almost had him on the podcast. He was the O-line coach at Oregon State the last year or two. Almost had him on
Ooh.
here.
Okay.
Has a lot of coaching experience. He understands the O-line. Oregon State is known for decent run game O-line stuff. So he was another good pickup. So now that you have two offensive line coaches there, which is highly important in college and NFL to have 2 to 3 of those guys, whether an analyst is one of them or is the third one. I think this will help the O-line, and I think that just showed they want to invest in that position because that was one of the most struggling ones. So those two are like under the radar hires. And even though those were last, I think one of the last like main position groups to hire, I think it could be he wanted to get it right too. Like, hey, I'm not going to just pick the first guy. I think he wanted to get it right because he knows that's the most struggling. So
Yeah.
that was like the under the radar hires for me looking at this.
Yeah, I do agree. Those areas just need to be touched up, period. And I mean, it's been talked about now many a times, and especially today while we're jumping on that, got to work on those areas inside. I think you got to get, as they've said, got to get back to basics. And I think that's going to be a unit and a part of the staff that I think is really going to get stressed. Hey, we need to like really get back to basics, guys. We need to find some way, for at least whoever we retain and for whoever we bring in, we got to look at what can get us in the right direction. Which personally, to me, is focusing on the running game again and then opening up the pass. We'll see if that pans out and what they do at that department. I know some people have this offseason, for example, have started where they've read reports that Ben Johnson and DeAndre Swift were not working together very well, which is why they moved on from Swift last time, which makes people wonder what's Swift's future in this offense. Is it a big deal? Is it not? Who knows? But like, to me, that's a question. Like, do you ride with that? Are you back to basics on working with getting your line up to snuff and then working with that running back? Or do you find someone else? Hard to say, but minimum, I think focusing on guys like that, on guys that are going to start getting, I think, the fundamentals down and also getting I think just more of that grit you need to work the interior line again is what we really want,
Right.
which is interesting because more of the conversation lately has been actually about on the outside portions, on the tackles. Shocking.
Yes, which is shocking because that I think that position just wasn't healthy all the time. Like the players were good, it was just maintaining healthiness. But the struggle became like the inside center to guards, and it didn't help
Right.
that you would put a tackle in as a guard spot. Poor Tevin Jenkins played all over the field, so I think that's why I like these O-line hires and getting back to basics that Ben Johnson has been preaching is get back to the basics. We're going to do things the right way. Taking that Dan Campbell approach, I think of like, we're going to be tough. We're going to do this. And so but it is shocking that they're like tackles. And I'm like, I would think the guard spots first because you have some young tackles. And
And I've seen some theories from people that are like, well, they could be drafting, or they could look to get someone that's like a guard tackle hybrid or someone they could convert. And then maybe they see a Braxton Jones, how his health progresses, like Poles is talking about, or they try and convert one of them to a guard. Who knows? But it is fascinating that the tackle position is the one that's getting most attention in these interviews when the obvious issue wasn't really the outside protection as much. So I don't know, but I think anything's on the table. Honestly, if they're trying to regroup, I mean, you do want to keep the best pieces as possible, but I think with something that comes with new coaching staffs as well, is you're going to see new evaluation as well of what people think the roster has as well. And I don't know if that is Dan Rochar's department, but I assume he at least has gotten a chance to talk with a bunch of these guys already that are on contract. And I imagine he has his own input. I mean, this is a guy that was coaching during one of the last good stretches the New Orleans Saints had for 4 years. He was with that Sean Payton crew for several years to different positions. So, it's funny because a lot of these pickups are either like ex-Detroit Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson type hires, or they're former guys that either Dennis Allen has worked with or kind of close to at times or knows. Everybody knows everybody in a little bit in the NFL scene, but like it seems like a lot of them kind of have that connection back to like 2 or 3 of those teams right now.
Right. To address the DeAndre Swift thing, apparently he was asked about it and he said, I think very highly of him, explosive athlete. It'll be fun to work together again with him this springtime. So it's either he's just saying the right things, Ben Johnson, or he actually means it and has, put my best foot forward, because I highly doubt with the money they're paying him that they would just let him go.
Yeah.
Like
I
I
don't
don't.
think they will, but I think his role is going to be under the microscope this year. Like, I mean, they did pay, like, again, for what they grabbed him for, I think people are going to just keep an eyeball on him anyway. Because, I mean, he's in his second year of a 3-year deal and, 24 mil, yes, I know, I think the running back market's going to be up for a reset here pretty soon. All thanks to Saquon Barkley. But, like, for the current market, he was kind of higher up for it. And I don't think that some people believe he lived up to that hype that he brought in. So to be determined, I guess.
Well, yeah, and and this is kind of still talking about the staff. The shocking hire was Eric Bieniemy as running backs coach. That one I did not see coming.
I think
Um,
I think more the fact that he's at this point of his career where he has to almost reset back to what made him
well,
get spotlight in the first place.
yeah, we can talk about Eric Bieniemy more now because he is a Bear. So now we're still
Mhm.
talking about a Bear. But I said this maybe to you because we've been doing this actually for a while. It's been kind of shocking that this has been going on for a while. That's why I hate when you give guys like that offensive coordinator title, because Eric Bieniemy, you cannot sit there and tell me that his full stint at Kansas City was he calling the plays 100% of the time.
Yeah.
And the reason
Yeah.
why I say that is because Andy Reid is a offensive genius. He's an offensive guru. Andy Reid always had a play card up to him. And so I'm not saying Eric Bieniemy didn't have input. I'm not saying Eric Bieniemy didn't have that role of like gathering everything for Andy Reid, but that's why I don't want that title. And that's why that person that said that to me, I think back to Eric Bieniemy, and people said that why is nobody hiring him? Because look what he's doing. And I'm like, because probably in the interview, there's probably questions I got asked that he can't answer because he didn't do it. Andy Reid did it. Now, I'm
Mhm.
not saying Eric Bieniemy didn't tell, and I'm not saying that Andy Reid didn't say, "Hey, call this play on third down because I'm dealing with this, whatever on the headset." Like that could happen, right? Like that's okay, but that doesn't mean he was 100% calling the plays, like a Ben Johnson that was calling the plays, like a Josh McDaniels that calls the plays, John Gruden calls all the plays, like that type. So that's why going to Washington, we kind of saw that where, okay, now you don't have the chef anymore. You're in the kitchen. You, you might have the recipe, but you don't have the chef. Then he had to go to UCLA and kind of go the college route, and found out maybe he doesn't like college. Maybe that's not where he's best fit. And now has to kind of reset and kind of reset his whole career. Hey, if I go to running backs coach, I do a really good job, then maybe I can get, and then I move on to like a pass game coordinator again. Then I can go somewhere and be an offense coordinator again. But
Sure.
I do think it's a good hire for the fact that like he was around Andy Reid and got to see how to do that stuff. Had a stint in Washington. Now that he only has to focus on running backs to get that better, to have that experience, I still think is good. But he's also, I think, a hard nosed coach. Hearing from what I've heard about him in Washington, like he's very tough. So I'm curious how he's going to relate to like Swift, and maybe he'll get Swift to run more downhill. Maybe he will get him to do this. But again, that's why I don't like the OC title, and I think Eric Bieniemy is the living proof of that. I think Matt Nagy was a proof of that coming to, when he was the head coach of the Bears.
Right.
Like he's not calling plays in Kansas City. Like it's not happening. Like Andy Reid's doing it. So I mean I liked it. It was just that might have been the shocking hire of like, wait a minute, Eric Bieniemy is a Bear. That's crazy.
Yeah, I just am more shocked because of, like I said, I think the fall, I won't call it fall from grace, but I think the almost the downgrade in such a swift amount of time. The last time, like the person that comes to mind right away that I've seen that I think has had that quick of a rise and that quick of a fall back down to like kind of in the chain. Uh, and I like this. I actually like this coach a lot from talking with him in the past. Is actually John DeFilippo, because it felt like
Mhm.
for a while he was like on an astronomical rise. He's about to get a head coaching spot. Remember Minnesota, Jacksonville in 2019, things were looking
Right.
really great. Goes to Chicago after he doesn't get a job in 2020. Things don't turn around. He sticks around Chicago for a year and then kind of falls out of the coaching sphere because of that whole debacle with the Mitch Trubisky scene at the end with Matt Nagy. And, you know, that was a little different. I think Bieniemy's has more just been, that struggle of, well, is he a really good play caller or is it Andy Reid? The same trap of, is it the actual coach or is it him? And then, he went to Washington. Yes, he put up him and Sam Howell put up insane passing numbers, but wins didn't come, gets more of that reputation for being that hard-nosed coach you talk about. And while I don't remember reading any reports like this personally, if those reports in Washington were any true, I imagine when he went to UCLA, I think he got really tired of working with more of the youth rowdy
Mhm.
type of player that maybe is a little less about the professional. I mean, not saying they're not all, but like I think maybe he got a little more tired of the less professional aspects of college players. And I think that's what's led him back to, okay, well, if I don't like this route in college, and I'm not, and I tried it, didn't like it, if that is the case, maybe I can go back here and I can start with a staff that I can kind of blend in and just focus on doing what I did best at the beginning. I mean, remember, one of the things people tout him for, and actually this is why like people were thrilled about this hire, is because you look at the history of running backs he's coached in the past. He's got two of the best of my generation on the docket. He worked with Adrian Peterson. He worked with Jamal Charles, two of the best
Mhm.
ones to ever do it. And, I think a lot of people feel like, if he goes back to his roots, again, just hyper focused on what makes a good running back, that can help a lot with, say a Dan Rosar that is able to go in and hopefully correct some of the fundamentals that seem to dissipate especially last season, more getting back
Right.
to basics, hitting the ground hard, opening the pass game, and working on better developing who's behind center because we have a good run game again. That's what I'm really hoping happens. We'll see.
Right. And I did like the JT Barrett hire for the quarterbacks coach.
Mhm.
My only knock against him is that he went to Ohio State. I'm not an Ohio State person, but I had to watch him tear up the Big Ten and do all that. But worked with the Lions, so Ben Johnson has a relationship with him. And what I like about this is you now have a former quarterback coming in who is still young-ish, not like super young, but he's still young-ish, that can maybe really help Caleb Williams in a former quarterback giving him advice. I'm not saying you have to be a former player in that position, but to be a good coach. But in this specific situation with a young quarterback, to bring a guy in that understands Ben Johnson's offense a little bit because he was there,
Mhm.
um, understands how to win, played in the Big Ten, played big time ball. Um, had 104 passing touchdowns in his career at Ohio State, which is a ton. He had 147 total touchdowns. I'm just Ohio State.
Well,
Um,
yeah, I didn't, Barrett. It's interesting. I had actually been wondering where he went, because he was in the CFL for a little bit, and he
yes.
had done a few others like spring football things after leaving the NFL. Um, yeah, I guess he had been working with Detroit, and I mean, they're like, oh well, yeah, no brainer. He's just another guy that's been kind of in that same realm as Antoine Randall and kind of knows what Ben is looking to do, you know. So I'll take it. I think what else I like with the choice of Barrett, it's more of a modern quarterbacks coach to me. This is a guy that, made his money on, yes, he had a decent arm in college, but he was a mobile guy,
Mhm.
and I think one thing I like is that you get someone that, you know, is just fresh off of being a player, that can kind of relate more to what Caleb's trying to get out of this. So
Right.
I think that helps a lot. And again, Barrett, like I said, you look up his highlight reels. JT Barrett, I think half of his highlights alone are just some of the run plays he had, because that was his whole thing. He could do as much damage with his legs as he could do with throwing a pass.
Right.
So I think that helps a lot with what they needed for Caleb to more work with, per se. A more simplistic one than, say, like a Shane Waldron, who like runs a complex offense and apparently was not as very workaholic. It was not very, I'd say, in a good working relationship, it felt like, with him for
No.
those first few weeks.
When he was smiling and Caleb Williams is looking at him like, "What are you smiling
Mhm.
about?" Like, "We're getting our butts kicked."
It's classic.
I counted without counting the 3 strength and conditioning coaches. There's 21 assistant football coaches. If you count Ben Johnson, it's 22. So they have 22 total football coaches for the Bears.
Now, to me, that sounds big, but you're saying that's not that big, though.
Our head football coach came in and he listens to the radio and he's like, "Man, they have like 20 some coaches, but apparently that's almost a league norm that they hire all these coaches." And I'm like, "I don't think the Bears have always had this many coaches. I don't think." Um, and like I said, they just have coaches everywhere. Like they have they have a lot of quality control people that are going to be put to work. You have an assistant special teams coach, which is good. Now you got 2 people for special teams, 2 O line coaches. Um, you even have like Matt Giorado. I can't say his name. He is the safeties coach, but then you also have a coach for like the nickels position. So you got like
Mhm.
different people. You have an assistant linebackers coach. Um, you have um, Antoine Randall, like wide receivers coach. Then you have an assistant wide receivers coach and assistant quarterback coach at the same time. You have a pass game coordinator on top of that. So Ben Johnson is trying to get all this set up. It's kind of like a Nick Saban. Nick Saban was like one of the first ones that wanted all these coaches because he apparently might be the NFL norm, or he learned it and says, "Hey, we need all of this to be successful," because I saw it in the NFL.
Sure.
So, so they are. So if you count the 3 strength and conditioning coaches and don't count Ben Johnson, you have 24 coaches because they have 3 strength coaches, which is awesome. That's what they need too. They also need decent strength coaches. So they have a ton. They have a ton of defensive quality controls. They have offense quality control. They have a defensive senior defensive assistant, senior
Mhm.
offensive assistant. So they have. He's trying everything. I think, like I said at the beginning, Ben Johnson's going to be one of the highest paid NFL coaches this year and has never been a head football coach, which is crazy. And the Bears are going to shell out money to pay all these people, right? So I
Right.
think Ben Johnson, probably one of his things to be hired is, I'm going to do it my way. And if I feel like we need all these coaches, more eyes, more people coaching specific positions to get them to be more successful and for us to win, try it, and it's okay if it doesn't work the first year. Most rarely things do work out that well the first year. It's not going to be like a Super Bowl next year, but it's a huge coaching staff, but they're trying. I'm going to give them credit. They shelled out the money for Ben Johnson. He's got the defensive coordinator. He's got all these assistant coaches, and some have a lot of experience, and some are newly experienced, which is okay, but got a lot of experience here. So right now, from that side of it, is trying to set up to be very successful, and he understands to win in the NFC, you got to do something like this.
Like, I think it's just getting competitive. You have to, and I think has been stressed this whole off season with some of the moves, gotta try something different. That it's just how it's got to be. We've seen a lot of the same things play out the last few coaching cycles. Let's see if we can try something different. I feel like that's kind of the message right now this off season is, we're attempting to do something that we don't often do, or let it. And now that, or in particular, we have Ben Johnson getting the keys to the entire thing. Now you can kind of lean into that and just say, all right, go get what we need, and I think that's what they're doing is they're putting a lot of faith in him. They did already leverage a bunch of monetary value on his behalf. They believe in him as, like many in the NFL do, as this next great play calling coach. And they're going to lean into that right now. That's what they're trying to do. So I can't knock them for it. I think it's just something that changing something to try and see if they can get better production. That's it. It's that simple.
He even hired a director of research and analytics. So like
Analytics.
so I mean they're going all out. He's going all out with this. I can't believe I didn't mention this either. I don't think we did a podcast after this happened. Virginia McCaskey passing away. I don't think we ever.
I kind of feel bad that we didn't actually touch on that yet, but I credit, it's been a minute. Yeah, it's the end of an era. That's what's weird, the last direct relative, or at least the last direct sibling, relative, you name it, connection to George Halas, his legacy, passed away February 6th. And she lived an incredibly long and healthy life with a lot of great memories attached to that life. Saw a lot of the best moments in football history through it too. So it's kind of a shame.
She saw a lot of ups and a lot of downs.
Yeah, I think, and one of the last true people attached to, I think, the origins of the league. I mean, like, that's the thing. She has had stories, and I'm thinking back to the 100-year anniversary. She had stories about George, and how George would like borrow money from her and her siblings to try and pay for costs to like keep the Bears afloat in the early days, or like he'd get paid back or something like that. But like kind of that connection back to like the origins of like how this league came to be, that's kind of gone now with her, and it's got to be weird in that office knowing that, George doesn't have really Virginia to lean on for any of extra guidance or anything. Like, he's kind of on his own right now,
Mm-hmm.
And I imagine there's still some griefing there, but like, moving forward, he's kind of on his own is the thing.
Right. And then when it happened, a part of me felt bad because all the yelling we did about the McCaskies, and I guess that kind of went to Virginia, I guess, but you also have people running the team for her. She's kind of the face of it because everybody knew who she was. I know at the Super Bowl they did a moment of silence for her, which was awesome because of the connection with George Halas. I just hope Virginia knew that it wasn't personal. It was more of like, come on, like, let's get this going. But also, no offense to her, very old. Was she going to be able to like put her foot down, make those decisions? Like, that's why she kind of left it to her family to kind of do. And the family is kind of the one that has done this a little bit.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, super sad. Like, I hope it wasn't like, screw you, Virginia. No, I don't think we ever said that. I think we were just all frustrated with like,
no,
it probably hurt her. It probably hurt her a little bit when people were like, sell the team. And I agreed, like, sell the team. But what a legend. I mean, she is a legend.
Oh, easily. Yeah, it was a lot of people. I like that they were like, it is nice that they at least got to end the season with beating the Packers.
Yes.
So kind of that final hurrah in that regard. You can't predict when these things happen, but like at the time, we didn't know, but like still, like it's got to be nice to be like, hey, at least she got to see a Bears win before she passed on. And I mean, look, we do mention the McCaskies a lot. I more push my critiques to George because he's one actively doing it. And look, it's mainly just because look, I just want to see winning Bears football again. That's all I'm saying. Fans do the same thing. They direct their frustration to who runs and operates things. And we know Virginia was at this point was, older up in her years. And I think she had realized that, yeah, she's not going to be as much operationally running things. So, I get it. I don't think we did anything like that, and if fans did target Virginia, which I don't think many did, then I think that's the wrong person to talk to,
Right.
clearly.
Yeah, because when you say
Yeah.
McCaskey's, the first person you think of is George. You don't no offense to Virginia, but, like, that's the first one because you see him. He's the one
Yes.
that is in the press conferences doing the decisions. So that's kinda like I know Virginia might have been, like, the face of the Bears because of the Hallis name, but, like, more recent years, you're thinking George because he's making these decisions and doing this. So it was either sell the team or Virginia, you fire him and be like, "You ain't doing this no more."
No.
Uh,
No. But no, rest her soul. That's all I had to add. Over 100 years of life is a very long and prosperous life. So very lucky woman to be able to see an entire century herself. So
Born in
yeah,
1923, which is
crazy, right?
insane. Saw World War II, saw, you know, Great Depression, saw
Hmm.
all of this stuff, saw the NFL come into what it was, and ooh, that's a
I
lot.
mean, think about that. Yeah, like you mentioned World War II. She lived through the prime of World War II.
Yeah, not like she was a
Like her,
kid.
that was her. She was in her young. She was like just growing up, or more growing up in that way. There, but it's nuts. Like, yeah, just I can't fathom. It's hard, or sorry, it's hard to contextualize saying you live for 100 plus years.
And the
Like, just flat out.
technology boom, like,
Mhm.
it's like, I thought I seen technology boom from the '90s till we are now. I know it's really ramped up over the last, I don't know, 15 years or so, but
Mhm.
imagine that, like, growing up then and then, like could you imagine her, like, this year with an iPhone and doing all this stuff? It's probably like, "What the heck is this? What's a Zoom?"
Oh, that would be funny. That would
Or,
have
like,
been funny.
electric car. Like, what is this?
What is going on here?
Like, I can't imagine, like, seeing the technology booms and seeing the stadium even, like, the technology of the stadium and everything, like, from
See,
what
that,
she
that
was
would
doing.
be that would be my angle. Is like, again, just watching football develop. You know,
Yeah, and to
like,
what it to this big conglomerate that it is
right?
now.
Like I mean, think about it. Even if we're talking like 1944, she's 21. You know,
Yeah.
like even then, football's still not like a mega. It's growing. It's clearly been around for a while, but it's not a mega sport. You know, like
No.
then you
No.
time skip to the 80s, and you're like, okay, it's kind of like up there now, but like the money isn't like booming just yet. And then you skip another 20 years, like, oh my god, it is the sport. You know, like
Well, and
you see that entire cycle of watching an industry grow to what it is now a behemoth, at least in the North American sports scene, and possibly now trying to become an international behemoth.
mhm.
It's starting to creep in that way too. You know,
And you said a very, very, very good point that I didn't even think till you said it. All the amazing Bears players she got to see play, Super Bowls or not, all the amazing players that she got to witness for
that's
the
right.
Bears. And even before 1985, like Dick Butkus and all of them and company, and oh, that's amazing. Didn't even think about all that.
It's wild.
All
That is
right,
wild.
all right, happy times now, happy times. Um,
Refocus, rediscuss. I guess unless you have anything else on the coaches, you want to talk about some
no,
of the early free agent stuff that's going on?
yeah, you educate me on some of the free agent stuff because um, some of it I keep up with, some of it I don't. And what I have been doing lately is going on the free mock draft and trying to do my own Bears draft, which we should do a live one ourselves, like stream, like share the screen and draft and see if we could do that. Not today, but like before the draft, like do our own.
I don't think that's a bad idea. Yeah, just at least the Bears one. You
Oh yeah,
know,
I click just the Bears, um, and I've done so many of them. Not maybe I've done like 8 of them, and some of them are only linemen, and that's it, nothing else. Like a bunch of D linemen and a bunch of O linemen. The one I did yesterday, I actually got running back and some linemen, and you go that route. But yeah, let's talk about some free agents because I know there's some people like the position group they need to focus on in this free agency is O line and D line. Same thing with the draft. O
yep.
line and D line. I should not be seeing wide receivers. should not be seeing this, should not be seeing that. Those are your first. That has to be done first. So
Yes, it clearly should be the focus. That doesn't mean people can't talk, because I mean, I've seen people throw out theories that we should pick up Cooper Cup, and I'm just like, no, we don't need Cooper Cup, guys. Let's focus on stuff we actually need, guys. Let's turn our attention back. You know, even Ryan Poles said fundamentals not there. Let's not focus on the receiver group. It's not the one that needs the problem. It's the fundamental building blocks, ladies and gentlemen. Which you want to talk about one that I today, as of a few days ago, that got removed. You know, there were two cuts that were made just last week that got people's attention, which were Gerald Everett and DeMarcus Walker.
yes,
Which I think more people were shocked by Walker getting let go. I know he hasn't been this world beater on the outside for them. Like, he hasn't been posting like insane sack numbers. He wasn't brought in to do that, by the way, but you know, it felt like it could have been one that they kept. You know, he had one more year on his deal left. Anyhow. But the justification was between him and Everett, they saved 10 million in change in cap space. And Poles is claiming that he's going to be aggressive this year in free agency with some things. Not to mention, yeah, and I know quotation marks. I got to specify that too. Not to mention is
I'm going to give him a chance. Let's get. I'll give
I
him.
know. I trust me. I'm being very lenient right now, and I'm just letting him go by his word. The other thing that I have to mention though is that yeah, keep in mind, and most people have this on their radar, that what are they going to do with Kyler Gordon, because they feel like he's up for a big contract this year, or his discussion is going to get louder this season on if they're going to pay him. So perhaps a move to save some more money to get him locked down and then focus in on everywhere else. You know, I know there's talk a lot about what they're going to do in the draft, and that they're in a position they could probably pick up a really good interior outside lineman right now, which would take away one of those pieces they need in free agency. But, you know, you opened up another 10 million in cap, and you're still sitting pretty high and pretty easily in the top 10 cap space in the NFL now, even more so. But then again, you have to now redouble down on, we need another outside guy or something like that minimum with DeMarcus. Gerald Everett's a little bit different. He's an older vet. They can find someone to fit more, I think, better in the scheme for Ben Johnson. But I think Walker, you have to find an immediate replacement in free agency right away.
Right. Which, this is not the answer, but I think it'd be pretty cool if they brought Khalil Mack back. I think that would be cool. But I just don't see
A
that.
lot of people want him back. I want him if it's a friendly deal. It has to
Yes.
be. It has to be a deal that you're not breaking the bank in terms of his age to bring him back. Because I think, yes, if you're going to maximize Montez Sweat's value, and if you're going to get him to be worth the money you just dropped on him, which this is a big year for him, I think, eval wise, for what they dropped on him. That wouldn't be bad, but you can't overspend on him. That's the only thing I got to give. This ain't 2018 Khalil Mack anymore. You know, I have to specify. You know, I think maximum 2-year deal, and it should be more a 1 year with an option for 2.
Yeah, it has to be a hometown deal. Like, I'll come back and play for the Bears like I did. And like you said, he's not the vocal point. This, like I said, not 2018 Khalil Mack. This would be and he may not even be a starter. He may have to be a rotative guy. And I just think that's where he is in his career.
If it makes him more efficient, I would take that in a heartbeat, quite frankly.
But that should not be the first vocal point. I remember them talking about I'll say his name wrong. Aziz from the New York Giants. He is a young edge pass rusher. And I know the Giants are not very good. He will be 6th ranked on the free agent market according to BR Board.
Oh yeah, you're talking Azeez Ojulari here.
Yes.
Yeah.
He had,
and he's only 24 as well. Really young prospect.
6 sacks in 11 games and 5 starts. He's not going to be 25 until June. Mm-hmm. So, young guy looking for a long-term deal, and it might be a long-term deal that you don't have to pay as high because of being on a bad team, and like I think you can finagle your way around to pay him. Another one they talked about was um, a guy from the Dolphins, Javon Holland. Javon
Mhm.
Holland
Yep.
talked about getting him. It's a free safety, but I think you need to stick with the D line. But that's just another defensive guy they've talked about. Um, and they could also use a D tackle. They could also use that too.
Quite frankly, that entire D line, I think, it really just needs depth, and it needs to find a legitimate second starter on the edge. Because you can't just lean on Andrew Billings. I'll be honest with you, and I do think Gervin Dexter has shown flashes, but contrary to what I think some people say, I don't think he's been that great in run defense. Personally, I think it's kind of bullied. I think he's much better as a pass rusher, but maybe that changes. Again, revamped entire staff. Really, quite frankly, they need to work on both interiors, but more so offensive. But they need depth. They really need tackle depth in Chicago for
Well,
DT.
and that's kind of where how many free agents should they sign? Like some people are really up there, like, oh, sign this, 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 and this. And it's like you can't sign these 5 or 6 guys and then also try to draft all these guys and expect to pay them, even though you've got the money, a lot of money in cap. Now you had 60 some $1 million. Now you're saving 10 or more million. So now you're up in the 70, $80 million range from these cuts that you've made.
Sure.
So that's kind of where it comes down to, do they think that, so let's say they go out and get 2 offensive linemen in the free agency, right? Because they're going to have to pay some offensive linemen to come, I think, especially if you're looking at Kansas City, if you're looking at Detroit, if you're looking at the Eagles, and they have some guys in free agency to lure them away from a winning team of Kansas City, a winning team of Philadelphia, a winning team of Detroit. You're going to have to pay them, right, to come in and
Correct.
be like that veteran leader. Then you have to plan, can you then address some of these other things in the draft? And the thing with the draft is you don't know how they're going to pan out. But now that you have Dennis Allen in there, he's changing some schemes up. He'll probably have a say. A former head coach understands how this works in the draft evaluation. So that's kind of where I don't know. Like, do you try to get like 2 O linemen and a D lineman and go to the draft and do those things? Because now that you've gotten rid of a D lineman, it feels like you have to address that right now. But the O line has been so inconsistent that it's almost like, do you just focus on that and hopefully you get some D linemen in the draft if you can't land? I think they will land somebody, but
Yes.
is it you want to make a splash free agency on the O line, or do you want to make a splash on the D line? I kind of think you need to go the O line route and then just find a serviceable free agent D lineman. And like I said, if you can get somebody that's decent, that was on a struggling team and doesn't have these huge, huge, huge numbers, and finagle your way around to where you're not paying them a top dollar like a Khalil Mack in 2018 and still be serviceable and try to get something in the draft, that's probably your best route to go,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Well, the one thing the Bears also, I think, are going to be challenged to do is I think you're going to see a lot of, I think you're seeing a lot of 1-year stuff through this. Cause I mean, they actually have a lot of depth they got to fill in too. Like a large chunk of their roster that was these depth pieces are going to all of a sudden become available, and that's not just saying it's only that, but like, for example, you got to fill stars too, like Coleman Shelton at center. Do you re-sign him? Do you look at the market? Again, we've talked about this on here, and I think I've talked with people outside here as well. Shelton had a terrible start of the year, but apparently he was one of the top end of rankings and centers for last season by the end of the season. So
Yep.
what does a contract for him look like? What are you doing with your reserve guards, like a Bill Murray, for example, or like a, or like a freaking Matt Pryor? What are you doing with those guys? How much of a deal are we
Right.
bringing them back for? Like Murray showed flashes, he was just injury issues, but are you expecting him to start, or do you have plans to replace his position and maybe like you have other ideas. Like this is what we got to deal with, with I think the signings like is that there's a lot of depth people on here that are leaving the Bears this year and their contracts are up. I think that's just got to be organized is what's up. I think personally you attack the if you're talking about the higher quality ones that need attacking, I think you personally attack the lines first. But I also believe that you should look at your defensive depth issues and really address those as well. Like for example, like again, I'm looking at like guys like say a Jack Sanborn. He's this contract's up after this year. So what are you looking at to replace him or fill in where he leaves his gap? You know, that's someone I'm wondering. Clearly you have to worry about long snapper. That's another one that's up too. Do you get Scott Daly back? What do you do there? I mean, that's a quick one, but like still, like it's small things like that. They got a lot of small like ticky tack back end guys they need to fill in too, besides finding those big starters, and that stuff does pile up. Not even to mention like it's not like you lose both centers. Doug Kramer, who they had kept touting for years, you and I have been talking, but they had touted for years was going to be this special character. Does he come back as a reserve? Do you bring him back? Like, what's your choices there? Or do you just let him walk? Like, there's a lot of stuff to discuss. Like, they have a lot of players moving on when you look at this list. Kind of crazy, really.
And there's a lot of, when you look at like the big board, there is a lot of linemen that are available. And so it just kind of depends on, we're seeing them shell out money for the coaches. Are they going to shell out money for some of these players? Or do they think that, hey, if we look in the middle of this pack of this big board, get some guys that, and we kind of get the last 2 to 3 years out of them, squeeze it out of them, but also they will bring that veteran leadership presence, which we talked about. The Bears just seemed like they had nobody from either side, defense or offense, that was like the leader.
Yeah.
Like you can't tell me that like the offensive guys wouldn't have listened to Brian Urlacher. Like,
right.
You can't tell me the offense wasn't going to listen to Khalil Mack and company in 2018. Like we really didn't have that person, right? Like you would think DJ Moore, you would have thought this, but it just didn't seem to happen. So I think now, if you're going to take the route of like the coaches, like we're going to have all these coaches for these positions, each group, who's going to be the leader of each group to get them accountable, right? And it just didn't seem like the Bears had that. The O-line didn't seem like they had it in the running backs. Didn't seem like they had it here. So is that an option too? Of let's find somebody that we can get some good years out of to develop, still draft these guys in the draft, get them ready to go, whether it's offense, defense, whatever it is, and kind of squeeze that out of them.
Who's if we go back to this free agent stuff, I'm going to flip on the other side on the defensive side. Who's been getting a lot of traction on online lately from people? It's Chase Young. A lot of folks want to see if they can. A lot of folks want to see if they can bring him in for a friendly deal, which is interesting because, like, I've also seen people that claim that he can get upwards of 17 mil a year, which, it's not the worst pricing in the world, but is he worth that for a guy that didn't? I think from injuries has not lived up to that first round hype. That's the question. Still young, but definitely not the same caliber of player that he was once viewed as.
That people want him because they look at highlights and they're like, look what he can do.
Well, sure.
And it's like, we know what he can do, but it's kind of like a Tevin Jenkins, right? If you think about it, like Tevin Jenkins shows a lot of good stuff on the O-line, but when he's banged up and he's not healthy, it shows. Now, again, I feel for him because, hey, you're going to be right tackle this game. All right, next game, you're going to be left guard. So I want you to be prepared. Like those type of things. If you bring in a Chase Young, it cannot be for a high dollar. It kind of like a Khalil Mack. Even though Khalil Mack's older, Chase Young's only 25, which is crazy. Yep. It's going to have to be like that. Like, hey, you're going to come in, you're going to play, but you are a situational guy. It's third and long. Do your thing. Like, go get the quarterback. Hey, the only way Washington can beat us as a Hail Mary, and you got to get to the quarterback, man. Like, that is your job. That's all you got to focus on. Like, I
Yeah.
would be happy with that. Again, like you talked about Khalil Mack and a friendly deal. It'd have to be that for Chase Young. Like, hey, we're building something special here. Look at it, you know, um, Dennis Allen's our D coordinator. Look at this. Look at what, but like, if he's going to buy into what they're doing and they want to try to, it's interesting because the Bears could. It's going to be like I would love to see him do like a half money ball thing and a half realistic thing. If you can
So
get
yeah, kind of keeping up what they a little bit have been doing for the most part.
a little bit, but you're getting guys that can play. Like, I'm saying, if you can do it, don't focus on that. But if it's, we've got our dudes, but Chase Young is still out there, we can get him for, cheaper than what we think. And he's a guy that can rotate and come and make big play. Look at the Eagles. I mean, they've got guys like that. Look at the Lions. They got guys like that.
Well, sure.
So
And Philadelphia, and this is something I praise Howie Roseman for. Like Howie, every year, he is one of, if not the most aggressive GM in football right now. The man knows he's got restrictive cap, but he always is looking to make a deal. It just has it. He's looking to wheel and deal every year, and it's resulted in 3 Super Bowl trips and 2 wins over the last 8+ seasons. So I mean, it's worked. It does have its down moments. You do have seasons that don't fully go as planned, or you're a little restricted by, I think, the talent or cap space. But like, look at this past year. Dude's been able to do a great job with evaluating talent and kind of getting the most bang for his buck. Now you see like a guy like Zach Bond, who's ranking on Pro Football Talk's 100 top free agents, is the 20th best free agent on the market at linebacker.
yeah,
Which funny enough, Chicago does kind of need a linebacker, which would be interesting if they picked up a second Eagles linebacker after a Super Bowl in 3 years.
yeah.
But again, like that all I'm saying is, that's what a good aggressive free like GM can do for you. Like, even if you have a little bit restricted money, you can still kind of wheel and deal with that cash and kind of play around with it. But not to the point where you're like bankrupting yourself like the Saints, where you have to somehow wipe 47 under the cap off the books by the start of this season. Like, they're in a nightmare situation. You don't want that. You want to be a Howie Roseman. You're always kind of available, but you have your core pieces locked down, which he clearly does. So, which it's amazing. But speaking of which, Philadelphia, I see their free agent list, and there's guys I kind of want the Bears to pursue a little bit, if I'm being honest. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, I look at a guy like no joke, Zach Bond. I look at too, 29, of course. But what if you get him for a few-year deal? To kind of fill in that for Jack Sanborn's spot, or I'm looking down the line here. Like Milton Williams is available. Josh Sweat's available this offseason. Now, credit, some of these guys might already be being talked to, but doesn't mean you can't talk to them. Their center, Nick Gates, is available. He's 30 years old. Definitely be up for a contract,
Yeah.
And this is just me throwing it off the loop, but I know that their team is definitely the one that most people analyze will lose a lot of top starters because they have a lot of good top starters you don't think about. And so, is Chicago going to be aggressive looking at guys like that? We're about to find out real quick.
Yeah. And then a Detroit Lion guard is going to be available, Kevin Ziegler.
Mm-hmm.
But he has relationships, but he is 35 years old.
Yep.
But when we talk about squeezing the last bit of them out, they even said, a lot of people have written, like, on the big board, he's ranked number 33. I think it's because of age. Mm-hmm. But that's a guy you could bring in for 2 years, 3 years, 1 or 2 years, 1 to 3 years. Sure. And just kind of get the ball rolling, right? Like, and again, relationships. He knows Ben Johnson's off. He understands.
That does help. I think that I don't undervalue that whatsoever. I would rather a guy that kind of understands that.
Another lineman who only gave up 3 sacks this year, Alaric Jackson. He was the left tackle for the Rams.
Yes.
He is up there. He's undrafted, so he has a chip on his shoulder to play well. He earned that spot. and he's only started for 2 years, but he only gave up 3 sacks. And that what are we looking at here with Caleb Williams not giving up 60, 70 sacks?
Right. Right. No, I'm with you there. And again, that's number one. It's built. If they're really going to address the building blocks, there's a lot of ways to do it, and they have a lot of space to do it. Actually, with the 10 million they saved, they jumped to number 4 with most available cap space right now, leading into free agency. So like they're really playing with a lot of cash right now. You know,
Demarcus,
Mm,
Lawrence will be available too.
he will be available. I think
Wow.
that's someone I'd, again, depending how much he's gonna take to be determined. But
He will be expensive. He will be a guy that
mhm.
can the Bears compete with Dallas money? But Dallas gonna have to make that decision too.
Well,
So
and I think Dallas's focus now is not per se on him, so to speak. Lawrence was, I think, in the last generation's top. But still is very viable. I think it just that comes down to a deal. And I'm more like I said, I think edge is great, and I think they should definitely focus on that and D tackle. But I also feel like this free agent market is ripe for the taking with, I think, guys that are like efficient money wise, like guards and centers that won't break the bank for you, you know. And like I look through this whole list, like I look at guys like, say, a Will Fries from Indianapolis, Josh Myers from the Packers is available as well. Now, credit again, some of these guys might get signed, but like if you're going to be aggressive, go talk to these people. Once free agency opens, mind you, don't tamper. But there's a lot of options. I know you mentioned Zeitler as well, but like James Daniels is available again. That would be writing a man that was here, who's gotten a little
yep.
bit more experience and gone about and gotten better coaching that could come back. Would he get a massive deal? I don't know, but like he's still in his prime in his late 20s and has found his way as a guard, so to speak, too. And I think the other question I want to ask, and before we leave, because we have to bring this up, is do you retain Tevin Jenkins? That would fill a role right away. It's just very injury prone is the downside. He just hasn't consistently been on the field.
Yeah, he is actually, I don't know, like I said, these boards get updated all the time. He was highly up there. I think in this one I'm looking at, he's at number 24.
In many circles, he's still a top 100 candidate. So in terms of free agents available. So like people view him well. It's just, can he stay healthy?
One report I saw, which would be very upsetting, is let's say the Bears don't bring him back. The Vikings are eyeing him apparently. So it's like, like he would go to the Vikings. I know the Patriots and the Vikings are like, they need linemen too, and they're looking at this. I don't know. That might be one of the toughest questions after the head coaching hire is all done now and everything's that's all settled in, which is still crazy that the Bears got it right. Like, I mean, as of right now, got it right. We'll see how it plays out.
Yeah.
That's a tough question because I like Tevin Jenkins's nastiness. He will pick up the quarterback when he's knocked over. He defends the quarterback. He has that mean streak to him. And like we said, when he's healthy, he is pretty good. But when he's not healthy and he's playing in these weird, because they have him labeled as a guard. I don't know what he is. Is he a tackle? Is he a guard? When he's playing and people have to remember, I'd have to watch film and like pick when he's played these different spots and kind of compare how well he's played there. It's hard to play in these different positions, so I want people to hold that against him. But man, it is a tough question, and I think it all depends on who you get in free agency. I mean, if you get Smith from Kansas City, like, okay, this guy is pretty good. If you get another guy, then it kind of pushes him out. That kind of solves your problem there.
Yeah.
But you have to move quick when free agency does open up because he is going to be a lineman that gets taken somewhere. And
yeah, I don't foresee him staying off the list long because I think what's going to happen is his injury issues are going to devalue him a little bit in contract negotiations.
well, that's my question. You might know better than me. With his injuries, right? And the Bears want to bring him back. The Bears would probably have to pay him more because he's been there. But if another team comes in, and let's say the Bears say we're not going to resign him, another team may pay him less than what the Bears are going to pay him because they're going to bring that up. Like your injuries are kind of a question mark. His
Sure.
neck, his shoulder, his knee. Um, so I think the Bears would probably end up paying him more if he stays, but if he goes somewhere else, he'll make less. Probably because
Well,
they'll bring that up.
he would make more. I mean, it's one thing is you know, Tevin Jenkins would probably, I think he would maybe make more, but I think maybe they would understand the situation better, perhaps. I don't know. Like, keep in mind, he's only 26, and unless I am mistaken, and this is why I'm kind of typing and double checking, he's still on his rookie deal. So,
Oh
you
wow.
know,
Okay, yeah.
like either way, like he would, like he'd be looking for a better payday than what he was getting. And I'm just double checking this on Spot Track right now. Yeah. So I mean, you got to consider he was on his rookie deal to kick things off.
I just feel like he's been there forever, so that's why
It does. It does. He's been through the ringer a lot. He's been moved around and messed around with a lot. He came in during the Nagy era at the tail end and has been through the Eberflus era. But no, he's going to be looking for a payday. So, I think either way, he's going to make more money. I think the question I would be if I was Tevin is, look, I'm viewed as still a pretty decent free agent pickup this year and most likely a starter. So do the Bears provide that for me, and do they give me a deal I feel is worth my value, even though I've been through this with injury issues? Or do I have great interviews and discussions with teams and their general managers elsewhere that makes me feel like I can best see myself fitting in and having a consistent presence in this offense?
Mhm.
I mean, credit, it's a little different when it's Ben Johnson now compared to, say, like if you were renegotiating under Matt Eberflus's run team. So that might come into play, but it also comes down to, does that staff view Tevin as a viable option that they want to continue with, or do they feel like they can get better? That's hard to say.
Right.
If other teams are looking at Tevin and going, oh yeah, if we can just get him healthy, dude's a bruiser, which he is kind of a bruiser. So he'll go and start somewhere. I think the question is, how much is he going to make? Hard to say. He'll get his payday. He's going to get paid more than his rookie deal. He'll make a nice bump, but how much of a nice bump that is to be determined.
Right. I guess to end it, 10 minutes ago, Ben Johnson on improving the O line from the CHGO Bears X account. This is an area we have to get better. That doesn't necessarily mean we need 5 new starters, but all it takes is one individual to blow up a play. So that's kind of the quote they took.
I mean, he's not wrong. I mean, again, like we want to talk about all year, I know you and I said we praised Bill Murray when he had his short stints starting. He just wasn't healthy, kind of got knocked out of the fray after having very short, limited exposure. Again, Tevin Jenkins, do you feel like he's going to stay consistently healthy enough to where you can ride with him for a whole season? Do you re-sign Coleman Shelton after he kind of, his back half of the year kind of picked things up and kind of, I think, was more stable than his start of the season? That's what we're about to find out. I still think it's crazy to me that the conversation's more leaning around Braxton Jones. Because I still think that's nuts. I'm like, that's not the guy I'd be looking at right now. That's not your concern to me. It's the 3 in the middle. You should be focused on what you're doing there. I think Braxton, like, I wouldn't mind going into next season with Braxton and Darnell Wright being the outer edges, and you just figure out what the hell you're doing in the middle. And then if you think Braxton's not it next year, you readjust. Because to me, Braxton is not going to be a liability where you're going to see another 60-plus sack season again. That was not the issue. The issue is the interior and managing the interior. That's what I want to see adjusted.
Right.
But apparently the discussion's more around Braxton Jones, which I'm just like, okay, whatever, I guess.
I think it'd be more around Tevin Jenkins.
I guess if they're like looking like maybe the Bears are in a position where it's like, we got to take best available talent. It's just one of those spots where, like, even if we wanted to reach for someone, that would be kind of, reach, I guess, because all the draft boards think it's going to be a left tackle or a tackle that gets picked up right now, which I'm like, okay, that's cool, I guess. But,
well, I guess to end, it's finally nice to hear a former O lineman that's now a GM finally saying how he screwed it up or they screwed it up, and now that we're
So
frustrated because this should have been taken care of a while back.
it took the man all 3 seasons to admit that he did every possible thing wrong in building the position group that he has played in his career. No big deal.
Right. So hopefully Ben Johnson understanding that that's what it takes to be successful, that they'll make the right decisions. And like I said, we still have the draft. So we're talking about free agents. There's still
Correct.
there's linemen in the draft that there's some good linemen in the draft that they can pick up as well.
Right.
So like I said, it can't get any worse. And so we can only go up. So I think to end it, I guess because I know you got to go, but
It's
yeah,
definitely time for me.
I think that it will. We got to be patient. I think we're kind of hitting the reset button, but not like we did a couple years ago. This is really like we have pieces in place. There are some options out there, but like you said, I guess then this is where I ended. How aggressive are they going to be in the draft? How aggressive and deals are they going to offer these people in free agency to lure them? Because it's going to be hard to lure away some people from a winning team to come to the Bears. And right now you have the aura of Ben Johnson, you have the aura of Caleb Williams, and some of these guys might want to put that staple on their career saying, you know what, I was winning at Kansas City, I was winning with Philadelphia, I was winning here, but guess what? I did my thing there. I went to the Bears, I helped rebuild it, I helped get that O-line group going, I helped get that D-line group going, they paid me what I was worth, and are they going to take that aggressiveness? And they took the aggressiveness with hiring the coaching staff. Can they continue it into free agency and make good decisions in the draft?
That's to find out. About to find out.
Well, everybody, thanks for watching or listening. We're back. The podcast is back. This weekend, hosting the first ever online clinic. Some football coaches are coming on and presenting different things on Saturday and Sunday. I think there's 14 or 16 coaches presenting between Saturday and Sunday.
Nice.
So they will all be live streamed. I hope if they can if they can work on StreamYard, it'll all be live streamed. If not, they'll get posted later off of Zoom, but they should be live streamed. It's going to be happening all day Saturday and Sunday. So I might get divorced. I might not. We'll find out after all that's done. So that's the next thing. Like I said, the podcast is back. That'll be the next big thing popping up. Some other things coming down the pipe from coaches I've talked to, so we'll see what happens there.
All right.
So we're back. Like and subscribe on YouTube and Rumble. They're on both. The clinic will be live streamed on YouTube, X, and Rumble. So multiple places to find it. So thanks, everybody. We will see you guys next time.